Hey, it's Daryl. I'm at Parliament in New Zealand, and so this is Wellington, the capital of New Zealand, and today there's a protest for climate change, or against climate change, I guess is a better way of putting it. Okay, so I just decided to replace the audio that I recorded at the time because there's too much crowd noise. What I noticed is they were setting up the PA and they were playing a bit of reggae music, and reggae music's quite good for having a chilled kind of experience at the start of a protest or a demonstration. And also the political message of reggae music is really in fitting here, which is really good. So I've just got a couple of shots here where I'm just showing a few of the parliamentary buildings to give people an idea of the area that the climate strike march came to. And I noted that there were quite a lot of tourists at this early time while they were setting up for the speeches and for the march to arrive. Okay, so when I went to the climate strike march, I didn't really know a lot about what was going to happen, and I had no idea how many people would be in the march. So when I was there early, it just looked like everybody was having a picnic, and I thought, it seems like there's more organisers than there are people participating. I guess what the thing was is that I had the idea of what time it was going to start, but what I didn't realise is that everybody who was in the march was gathering a few blocks away, and they were marching through the main office and shopping streets of the inner city, and I didn't really appreciate that. So I just walked around the lawn and took lots of photos of people and signs to get an idea for what was going on. Soon you'll see some more of my commentary that I shot at the time. Okay, so the format is that there's some people that are going to march in. The people that are up on the lawn are the people who wanted to just come up and chill out before the protest. But the march is going to come down the road, and you can see that there's even the Solidarity band is here. That's quite fun. Okay, so the protest has a little bit of an interesting mixture of people sightseeing because we're at Parliament, and office workers out on their lunch break because the streets around here have some of the biggest office buildings in the city. So a lot of people come out on a nice day and just come have lunch, and we've noticed that there's police and roadwork crews are setting up to block the streets, which I presume is for the marching people to come up the road here. So I'll show you a bit of that. When I went to the march, I didn't really know how big the march would be, but it became more and more evident that with the police coming to block everything off, that the march was actually getting pretty big. The failure of our council. The council got rid of our electric buses. There'd been electric buses in the city ever since I remember when I was a little kid. I think it went from tramways to electric buses. So basically public transport in our city has been fully electrified for around 100 years, and then about 2 years ago they took down the bus wires, so that's just a thing that really annoys me. Other countries use these sorts of electric buses without any problem. They seem to manage the costs and expenses without anything going wrong. Anyway, the first part of the marches were chanting for climate justice, and there were a few different chants all the way through. But what was very interesting about this is that Pacific Island nations were well represented in the march. So these countries, a lot of Pacific Island nations have rather low-lying land, and so they're the kind of countries that if a lot of warming causes the sea levels to rise around the land, these are the kinds of countries that will have a lot of their land will be taken over. I saw Tuvalu in here as well, and what's notable about Tuvalu is that it's just coral atoll type islands. So Tuvalu as a country would probably be completely destroyed if the sea around Tuvalu rises just a few meters, because most of the land is just so low. I travelled through Tokelau Islands on a ship one time, so it gives me an idea for how these sorts of coral atoll island nations will fare under sea level rise from climate change. But the parade just went on and on and on, and I recorded a lot of the parade of the marches for a long time. So what I'll do is I'll post that video in a separate video because it's kind of too much to show here. I was just very surprised by the amount of people who turned up, and then one thing that's quite notable is that the grounds at Parliament couldn't fit all of the protesters. So what I noticed is that when after the marches had gone by, I think I gave up recording the marching at about 25 minutes, but the marchers were still coming in, and then I went around to the area where they were making speeches, and when I looked back across the road, so what is this street? The street where the National Library is. Sorry, I'm just gonna look that up. There were people standing outside of the Parliament grounds, out on the footpath. I guess the traffic had been stopped at that time because I don't recall very many cars driving by. But yeah, the number of people just exceeded the amount of space. So that's by far and away the largest protest I've ever seen. So I remember when I was a little kid, there was what do they call them? The Springbok protests. They wanted to have rugby matches between South Africa and New Zealand, but because of South Africa's apartheid regime, a lot of New Zealanders protested this rugby tour because the racist apartheid regime in South Africa. People were saying, why was New Zealand participating when most countries are embargoing South Africa? So at that time, that was some of the biggest protests that I'd ever seen, but I just vaguely remember those being on TV when I was a little kid. So that was something. But yeah, I've never seen so many people, other than like when you have a bunch of people emptying out of a stadium after a concert or a big sports match. So yeah, pretty impressive. And I understand that they're going to have some more of these. I mean, this is the kind of wake-up call stuff that governments really need. When I got on the train on the way back from the march, I was looking in the news headlines on my phone, and they were saying that the crowd estimate was around 40,000 people. But what's really interesting here is that Wellington is the capital of New Zealand, so there's certainly a lot of people here, but 40,000 people is more than 10% of the population. So Wellington region, if you include Wellington City and the Hutt Valley and Pararua, the reasonable, the people who live within sort of half an hour driving range of Parliament, that comes to about 300,000 people. So if the crowd estimate was 40,000 people, that's a really decent chunk. Way more than 10% of the nearby population. I would imagine that some of these people came in from further out. I mean, they came out from the kind of outer suburbs, so about 50 kilometres to come and see this. But, the metro lines coming into Wellington easily go 50 or 60 kilometres out of the city. And that means that people can come in from quite long distances. There's not very much car parking in the middle of the city, so I would imagine that a lot of people came by public transport. But also, because it's in the middle of the city and it's in the middle of the office building zone, maybe a lot of people were just in the middle of the city. And there's quite a lot of apartments right in the centre of the city, so it's very much possible for 5 or 10,000 people to just come down, but these numbers are humongous. It's hard to. This is like the equivalent, if you put it in the United States kind of way. This is the equivalent of like 2 or 3 million people turning up in Washington DC for a march. As a proportion of our population, it's a big chunk. So like, in this city alone, 1% of the entire population of the country, or pretty near 1%, turned up and came to the march. So, that's a very strong turnout. I was honestly just surprised at how many people turned up for this. I mean, it's kind of easy that a lot of people can turn up when effectively, people can abandon going to school for this day. Just an interesting point is that the way our school year is structured, the following week is school holidays. So this is the Friday before a 2-week school holiday. This is our, I guess, the equivalent of the spring break for primary and secondary schools in New Zealand. So that kind of thing makes it a little bit easier for a lot of people to turn up. Obviously, the involvement of children in this is huge, but you can see here that I wouldn't say that the majority of these people here are children. There are quite a lot of children. I counted also 8 dogs supporting climate change in the march, so that's good. And there's a lot of mixed political things going on here, and I actually saw one person protesting a totally different cause, which I was sort of kind of amused by. The other thing that's interesting is the signs that people are carrying. They're all very different. There's not much in the way of mass-produced signage. It's not like some organisation was sitting there printing signs for everybody to hand out. So I've heard some people say that some protests in some other countries seem to be organised by people who turn up with truckloads of signs for people to carry and stuff like that. So this seems like a very natural kind of protest where it's not highly organised. Everybody is doing their own thing. You can see here there's a group of people. I don't know what their cause is, but sometimes you get big blocks of people participating. But yeah, anyway, that's just my rambly personal thoughts about that. I hope you enjoy listening to them. If you've got this far through the video, then you probably have. And then for the rest of the video here, I just have a few. I took a walk through the crowd when I moved on, so that will be coming up shortly. And for a few other bits and pieces, I just took a few photos of the crowds from a few different angles. The whole thing was was pretty interesting. So it's just a oh yeah, so this is up on the parliamentary grounds. So this is outside of the beehive. So because of the way of the shape of the land, it's hard to get a good photo. I couldn't get a good photo of where we were. So here I am, just having a walk through the crowd. We were just trying to move to a different location to get a different photo. But what's quite interesting here is that they had barricades set up, but people were able to, in some of the parts, kind of walk around. I was trying to work out the lay of the land. There's also they're redoing some of the pavement in the grounds, but yeah, the ground's looking through that direction there. There's a couple of 100 meters of lawn, but the lawn's on a weird angle. The lawn slopes upwards towards the building, so the buildings are on a hill, so it's hard to get a good picture. There are other pictures, I'm sure, that anybody who's very interested in this topic, you will have been able to look for online and go and see. So there's the older part of the parliamentary buildings. I think that's where the debating chamber is. And there's big steps. So in front of that big stone building, there's big steps, and a lot of people who work in Parliament. I saw a dozen or so people way up on the top steps. I guess they'd come out of their offices to have a look at the march, and I understand that a couple of the MPs, or at least one MP, addressed the crowd. But yeah, when the speeches started, there were really still people turning up. There were just lots of people walking around everywhere. There's a bit where they're doing some paving work or something on the ground, so there's a little bit. It's not a very big area, just, I don't know, 20 metres by 20 metres or so that was fenced off. So we went around there, so you can kind of see up there that the crowd's just sort of filled up the whole area. It's a very big area in front of these buildings. So yeah, it was totally crowded. You can see from, if you compare to the start of the video, how all of this lawn was empty. There were people just out having lunch, and a few tourists moving around. Oh yeah, that's the view over the back fence. So the crowd couldn't all easily get in through the gates. There's a few rather small gates along the side at the back that people just couldn't get into very easily. And then I took these last photos as I was walking away. Oh, there's a video out of order. Yeah. So anyway, I hope you like watching that, and I hope my rambly commentary kind of makes some sense. But I was just very shocked about the whole size of the thing, which is excellent because climate change is going to be a total disaster. If you'd like to help me, please subscribe to my channel, and otherwise, just thanks very much for watching.